G'day everyone, I hope you're all well. I thought I'd take a moment to talk to you about the Critical Policy Analysis Essay for HSP406. As per usual, you can see I've got some shitty little graphics on the first slide that kind of talk about what it is we do in this particular assignment. First of all, most importantly, you have to decide on policy or a practice or something like that you're going to focus on in the assignment. Then you'll need to do a bit of research. You'll need to do research online and you'll need to do research in the library databases. Then you'll have to have a bit of a read. Now, this includes both the policy and the research, but I would argue that once you've found your policy, then you need to sort of have a good read of the policy to know the different things that you're going to focus on, and then you find your research, which then supports the different parts of what you're talking about in your policy, the critical analysis of the policy. And of course, once you've done those things, you type it all up as an essay. Hopefully, it's a fairly simple process. So just a reminder that this is the second assignment that you submit through the Milo site for UTAS, in addition to the leadership essay. So this essay due date is on the Milo site for you. It's 2,000 words maximum, and again that excludes your reference list, and it's weighted at 40%. So our overall topic that you're writing about is how policing organisations will develop and promote strategies and policies to address different forms of safety and so forth of police and the public. These policies often come out of a specific set of circumstances, and sometimes they even come out of a particular event. Using an essay format, we need you to write an essay that critically analyses the strategic Victoria Police policy of your choice. You'll need to draw on current scholarly literature that you find in the library databases or using Google Scholar, and reference using a referencing style that you choose, which is totally fine, and that discusses research about these particular issues. This can be national or international research. It doesn't have to be specific to the policy. It might be a similar type of policy, but in an international context, for example. So some research of government reports and websites will probably be necessary. You may also find critiques of other police policies that are related to this particular area that might be useful. Or if you're really lucky, you'll find critiques of the exact policy that you're talking about, which is highly unlikely, but nonetheless, a little bit of gold at the end of the rainbow if that actually happens. So this is what you need to do. First of all, find your policy document and read it. It's useful to find some sort of context so that you can actually talk about that in part of the essay as well. So is there some news about the policy, some political speeches, Hansard, for example, etc., about when it was implemented and what the purpose of the policy is. After you've done that and you've had a good look at what you're going to be focusing on the policy, so your major strength, your major weakness, the three assumptions that you need to focus on, then you go to the databases and you find the articles about the main issues that you've identified in the policy. This will save you a bit of time because sometimes you can spend lots of time looking at articles which aren't relevant to the bits of the policy that you're going to focus on. Then you write up your essays and analysis of the policy, critically challenging the ideas using scholarly literature. Now, important point here, critically challenging doesn't necessarily mean being negative. It can mean highlighting how the different parts of the policy, in fact, are well supported by the evidence base, the research evidence base that we've got. Then, of course, you upload your response as a Word document to the Milo site. As per usual, I love structure, so I've given you a little bit of a structure for this task. About 200 words as an introduction is always a good starting point. One paragraph, include an overview of the topic generally, and then you introduce the policy you're focusing on and a roadmap of each point that you're going to cover in the different sections of your essay. The second bit is a brief description of your policy. Now, this is where that context might be useful. So media articles about the policy, any media releases that the organisation may have done about the policy, Hansard, anything that really links with the policy in particular. Sometimes it can be media articles talking about the event that led to the policy, for example. So talk about that context there. Then we want to go into the critical analysis of the document. You've got about 1,400 words to do this, and I've divided it up into 3 major questions. Now, this doesn't mean that you necessarily have to follow this. It's a suggested structure after all. If you've got a better idea and you want to run it by me, just send me an email and we can go from there. But essentially, the things that you have to cover off on in some form, because they are in the marking rubric, are what are the key assumptions about policing underpinning the policy document. And I've said that it's useful to focus on 3, given that you've got that 1,400 word limit. What is the main strength and the main weakness of how the policy approaches policing or the particular problem? And what are your key recommendations about the policy into the future? Again, you can focus however many words on this. Then you need your conclusion that summarises your main points that you found and talks about what to, so what for the future. And then you need your list of references, which is always excluded from the word count. You can use Harvard, and there's a little library style guide there for you, or you can send me an email and let me know about the style that you want to use, because you already know how to do it. And that is totally fine. I don't want you to go and learn a new referencing style. I'm pretty sure that could be sold off as a form of war torture. So, some general tips. Make sure you've got a clear introduction outlining what you're going to cover. Then outline your policy. Make sure you answer the 3 questions in your analysis in some form and support your ideas with references to research. Clearly identify a key strength and a key weakness. A lot of people get less marks in this section because they talk about a whole bunch of weaknesses and a whole bunch of strengths, and they just list them off instead of bringing in one strength and then bringing in the research literature to say this is why it's a strength, okay? Use quotes sparingly. If they did well, people, they usually don't have many quotes. And you can bring out little phrases and things from the policy without, being marked down for having too many quotes, just so you know. Signpost well in your writing. So things like this policy was underpinned very clearly by an assumption that young people don't get along with police. Yep, nice and simple. Make sure you proofread, have a good structure, spelling, punctuation, have subheadings, reference properly, and consistency. Sometimes people got caught up with some different things, not following the essay structure. And that doesn't mean that you have to follow it to the letter. You can find another structure that you think might work better, but make sure you follow some sort of structure, because it can be pretty hard to find the bits when people don't do that. Using the entire assignment to describe the content of the policy, you're definitely going to fail if you do that. Sometimes people don't even describe the policy, or they do it in really general terms. Sometimes people don't identify a strength or a weakness, which is really quite a significant part of your assignment, so please make sure you do that. Sometimes people don't use research to support their ideas. I've already talked about how critical doesn't necessarily mean negative. Some people don't have subheadings. Some people have follow-on sentences where 2 sentences are joined together with the word however in the middle. And some people don't edit their work before they submit it. They have referencing errors, grammar and spelling errors, all of that sort of stuff. Think about your paragraphing and how you develop full paragraphs with 5 sentences, ensuring that you have your linking and transition sentences in there, and your your paragraph structure around PEEL, which is point, elaboration, evidence, linking sentence. Minimize your quotes, and some people don't use 1.5 line spacing. So what does the marking rubric say? That this is what we use to mark your assignment, obviously. We talk about critically discussing the underlying assumptions of a Victoria Police policy. And you can see, if you want a high distinction, I've talked about 3 specific underlying assumptions. Critically analyse the strengths and weaknesses of a Victoria Police policy. Detailed critical analysis of one specific strength and one specific weakness of a Victoria Police policy. So it's very, very clear. Then we talk about making recommendations about the future purpose, direction of this particular policy. Specific recommendations about the future purpose direction of that policy, right? And you can decide how many you want to do, but bearing in mind that you've only got a certain number of words and you need to make it fit with that. The more specific information you provide, the better your outcome is going to be in this section. So if you're finding that you can only overview 2 key recommendations in the small amount of words you've got, say 200 words, then that's what you do. It's really simple. So you can fit the amount of recommendations that you have based on how many words you use in the assumptions, how many words you use in strength and weakness, whatever you've got left you can use for your recommendations. And of course, the final part is just about communication, making sure you're addressing the set task and you're not actually writing a literature review, using appropriate language, introduction, conclusion, spelling, grammar, all of that stuff, paragraphing, and attributing the work of others correctly, which is, of course, referencing. Just a quick reminder that you need to have a good structure to your essay, an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, and you can revise those things in terms of the core skills stuff that I put up there about how to write an essay and how to do referencing, etc., etc. I always like to give examples of paragraphs from a previous student's assignments, and I've given you an assignment paragraph here that's focused on an assumption. So you can see the way that this person has structured a paragraph about an assumption and the type of assumption that they've used. This person's used lots of references in their work. It's not expected that you have to use that many, but this is really an excellent example of a paragraph. We've got a good topic sentence at the top, which clearly signposts that they're focused on the second assumption. Then we've got a whole bunch of points that elaborate the research evidence and the point that they're making in that paragraph. Then we've got a nice linking sentence. As a result, this assumption is theoretically possible, yet challenging to achieve or sustain. That clearly links to the overall point of the essay, which is to show, we're critically analysing this. Is it sustainable? Is it something that's supported in the evidence base? I've got a nice example of an introduction from the same essay, and you can clearly see that there is an overall aim identified, and we've got those major roadmap points. And then we've got a couple of introductory sentences that talk more broadly about what the essay will discuss. Then we've got a nice example of a conclusion. And they've got an overall conclusion about where the organisation should head in future in terms of this particular policy. And that is it. I hope that was helpful. As per usual, please don't hesitate to get in touch if you've got any questions or concerns about this assignment. Very happy to chat before you end up rocking back and forward in a corner somewhere, freaking out and wondering what you're going to do. On that note, I will leave you all to it. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Laters!